shaken yet standing firm.
I was not built to break.
This is Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participate.
Me to sort of stay on the right side of behavior, well, you better stay tuned.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255. Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks very much for joining us. And if I might say to her publicly once again, Dr. Alexandra Warden, for reaching out across your colleagues and extending an invitation. It's been very helpful. A fellow just earlier shared with me to say to others that because of this monthly program, it has allowed him with confidence to speak to his GP, and from there speak to one of the counselors to talk about things. Awesome. He is helping. He's, so much better because there's somebody that you can talk to about things that are life and the stigma that we had. So thank you, Mom.
No, I'm so glad to hear that. And that's also what I like about having a range of professionals. So we may have a psychiatrist joining us, but obviously I'm a psychologist. Miss Anna is a health coach. So you can see the different kinds of professionals that are here to support you with whatever your goals may be. So I'm really glad to hear that, because of the information that we shared, he was able to go and get the help that he needed.
And to do so, he said, and I was very appreciative that and I'm not talking out of school, not between any confidences. He said his first call is, remember you promised to do this thing. And I said, yes, and it's done. And he was like, oh, I didn't see it. So he's publicly apologized. Okay. I did it. There was nothing. I just brought a piece of paper to his desk. It was done. And unfortunately, it wasn't an email, so it got lost under the papers. So that was one of the reasons that prompted me to say today, this is what we're talking about, because managing expectations. We expect of our spouses or children or family or colleagues sometimes an unreasonable, ill-timed response to that email, that request. And we find ourselves in the environment we have been for the last 2+ years, that there's a lot of changes. So
for sure.
A timely discussion, but are we truly able to manage not just expectations, but the workplace sort of stress and stresses of life and family and balance? And you say managing workplace and working from home. Wow. Our homes are no longer our havens.
Right.
Our homes are now our conference tables. We all dress from the waist up and very comfortable attired. I know a friend who's barefoot when he's on his conference call. I'm not sure what else he's not wearing, but he's done it barefoot, which is interesting, right? So expectations in managing workplace stress?
Yeah, no, for sure. Expectations of others and of ourselves. So, and I agree. I think that this day and age, with all the advances, there's phenomenal amounts of productivity to be had, but also it's even more important for us to be mindful of ourselves, of our workloads, of our boundaries, and of our relationships with others.
Okay. I just asked, and I want to be guided because I think sometimes I have I say have because I'm thankful I saw that relationship. I had a teacher early on in high school that made learning truly fun. His approach was, if this classroom can be a little jovial, then maybe you will come away remembering the point of the lesson. You don't need to regurgitate the formulas and the like, but you make an association. So my brother that I reference, he literally is barefoot. Now, whether the shorts he has on, whether the pants he has on fits the coat and tie because of the presentation, but you sitting at the table, you only see it from the waist up, right? And he said that at work, some must wear particular style shoes, women and men, and they're appropriate, but they're uncomfortable. You're at your desk and your feet are squished into this thing. Can you imagine the police officers with those shoes, those heavy shoes that they're walking in all day? They look wonderfully attired, but they must be kind of hard, right? Or construction workers that have these shoes to protect their feet because they're safe as they walk through the job site. But they must be at times probably heavy and uncomfortable. I'm only guessing, right? In his case, he says one of his best things now from working from home, he's barefoot, right?
Yep.
And his feet feel so much better. And I relate it to this thing I have on my head, not my hair. It squishes your head, it squishes your ears, but it's part of your job. I mean, I do wear it to look cool, don't I? But there's some good that come from this because his day now, he can sit at his desk and his feet, and he can crinkle his toes and his feet feel so much better, So that has been a good, but that's only one good of maybe a lot of not so good.
Well, I haven't worn heels since COVID, not even going back to the office. I even take to the office fuzzy socks. Who knows what you're doing under your desk?
Exactly. But you can get up from your desk, and if you were to walk, let's say in your fuzzy socks, to the water cooler.
Maybe not,
right?
Yeah.
You'd be conscious of that. What would your fellow colleagues say?
Yeah.
What if a client came in there, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I noticed because there was another lady who said, she earned that, right? She opened that office, and she would bring to work her slippers, almost like bed slippers, and she would put them on to walk through the office. Now, nobody dared question her because she was the authority, not because she was mean or she knew everything that you needed to, and she did it well, and she brought in the best baked goods. But she said, listen, at my age, I've earned this right to be comfortable. I'm not going to slip and fall and can't come into work. I'm not going to have bunions or whatever it is, on my feet because these were the things. But I can't walk from the parking lot, in these things because, well, the gravel and the pavement, but they don't look good with, her other articles of clothing. But she had that consciousness, that sense of, in my mind, confidence that in the office, she's going to take off these wonderful shoes that, they might have been bandolinos. I don't know what it was back then instead. But they were comfortable. But she had that, right?
It's a nuanced conversation we're having today, I think. We have to remember first and foremost how privileged people are that have the option to work from home. There are so many who are displaced from their jobs due to the pandemic, can't earn money if they're not physically able to attend their workplace. Right. So I'm someone who has a day job that allows me the flexibility to work from home. I just had COVID in January and was able to work for 2.5 weeks from home. So there's a luxury there. But there is now these other parts of what you're saying. There are benefits that we're seeing, but then also I could see how that could slip into some of this loss of structure, loss of identity. I think sometimes the clothing we put on, and I haven't gone back to heels since returning to the office, but I found like chicer flats, and I wouldn't wear anything at home, just like your friend, I would be barefoot. But I think that the clothes all of it helps create a persona that you go into work with, the people that you see every day on your walk in, what you wear, how you sit. And that does create that sense of I am now at work. I am in the workplace. You have a structure and a routine and boundaries.
Structure. I just wrote it. So I want to ask that, and certainly want to be guided by you. And for those who are listening, I think that we probably, again, please guide me. And as part of preparation, thank you, Dr. Borden, for sending, as you do, so much information to help to sort of instruct. But also I've reached out to some of, I'd call them friends, but they might say I'm being a little too kind with that word because they're smart. They will say, I don't know if I want to call them my friend. But they've allowed me to ask them survey questions, what it's like been working. And a number of them have experienced a few things that they thought we need to be careful that that doesn't become the norm, right? And yet there are some wonderful things that have transpired that should be the norm. So the structure, my male friends will still get up and follow their routine as if they were going to work. At the same time, doing the same thing: shower, shave, exercise, put on the coat and tie, whatever it is, and from where they're going to be seated for the day to where they've left the kitchen, the steps may only be a few, but that coffee mug in hand that they would take with them to work, they do the same thing to maintain that. And then there's a guy who says, listen, because he's not at work, he's not productive, he's not functioning, because there's so many distractions of what is in his mind sort of conditional upon being at home, or that light switch needed to adjust. He's distracted because the space is the space that he relates to. These other things is not the office space. So that structure is that important. And then when we come back from the first break, let's ask about productivity and employers' expectations. So I'll put it here so that you remind me. One has said the employer has made it very well known to all of the staff. Listen, I expect you to be present and accounted from, say, 9 to 5. Whereas a number of employees have said, listen, I get more done between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m. than I can in the office all day, because there are the distractions of everybody else. And yet the expectation is, well, I don't care. You need to be in the office, so I need to see you. How do we get the employee who needs the structure and the employer who understands that at the end of the day, if the client is served, the job is done to the highest standard, if not even higher than what was before, that it doesn't matter, or should it matter? Can we talk about some of those things?
Yeah,
that's
for sure. Good conversation.
Yep.
Wow, you imagine what he comes up with, man. All right, and that's the other thing. Laughter is good medicine. Let's pause and take that break, and when we come back, we invite you to be a part of a discussion. The phone lines are open, 949-8837. Toll-free call, 1-800-534-8255. And if not, you can call Miss Susan's personal number. It's 123-456. No. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Join the Alex Panton Foundation for our 5th annual Youth Mental Health Symposium, taking place on Saturday, 19th of February from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., featuring an impressive lineup of speakers and panels discussing our theme, Thriving in Uncertain Times. This year's event will be streamed via the Alex Panton Foundation Facebook page. Visit alexpantonfoundation.ky to learn more. Sponsored in part by Dart, 3T, Burger King, Popeyes, Tower, and Compass Media.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray, and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
A couple means two. Whether it's your spouse, significant other, or bestie, couples who sweat together stay together. King Sports Center is offering a gym and bowling special this Valentine period. Get 2 annual Powerhouse gym memberships for $750 starting from February 6th and ending on the 14th. Receive a free self-defense class for 2 upon purchase. At Kingpin Bowling, couples can get 2 games and 2 glasses of wine for only $40. The bowling offer is from February 11th to the 13th only. For more info, call us at 946-5464. That's 946-5464. King's Sports Center, your second home for fitness and recreation, celebrating 20 years of service.
Are you a recipient of the Tourism Stipend Program? The Ministry of Border Control and Labor requires all recipients to complete a survey to reconfirm their contact information. The survey can be found on gov.ky/labor/stipend. The survey must be completed no later than Tuesday, February 8th. Contact 649-6932 or email stipend@gov.ky with any questions.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Afternoon. Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us. And in the studio, we have the excellent company of Dr. Alexandra Borden and Miss Anna Borden as we have their monthly Mental Health Matters show. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or you can WhatsApp 925-3261. Maybe your mic is working better than mine, Dr. Borden. We'll figure this out later.
Well, I've got 3. Do you want one?
This one? Okay. Yeah, you good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. But thank you. I think that this is a very relevant topic. It's one that was actually requested by one of our past panelists. And I think it's important. And so what was actually requested was kind of managing workplace stress, which is huge. You know, I'm sure all of us see in our practice every day the impact of difficulties that we commonly see at work, like financial concerns, difficulties with relationship. I know I've seen a lot of bullying recently, unmanageable workloads, unrealistic expectations. But now we throw into the mix half the team working from home, you know, people being out for COVID isolations and quarantines and still expected to work, and some people thriving in working from home and now being dragged back into the office. And we've got a very mixed environment, which creates and even other levels and layers of stress, because there's all these other options now and other expectations that we're having to deal with at the same time. And for managers, often teams being mixed if they are in an office where people are allowed to be at home.
So it's then to some extent the notion of what we expect of ourselves and this, maybe the stress, the over sort of burdens that we place on ourselves. I'm thinking to what Dr. Borden is saying, Ms. Anna, the notion that for some people, they're in the office and they're comfortably attired, appropriately and properly attired. It may be a bit different than what they used to wear, but is it a case where we're now, even something as simple as what we're wearing on our feet, maybe the top, I guess the women wear, the shirt, that piece that goes on the torso, it doesn't have to be a long button-down white, long sleeve shirt, heavily starched. It could be a nice cotton pullover of sorts, right? Because
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of flexibility. I can't speak to every company, but I think even when there's been a return to the workplace, there's been a little bit more openness and flexibility, which this pandemic has brought about. If we're trying to look at any positives, there is now the notion that if you're just not feeling well, but you feel you could work, you don't have to use a sick day. You could go home and work from there. If your children are sick, you don't have to lose out and use your sick days for that. You can maybe dress a little more casually, or at least when you're working from home you can. But it's just, I think, where we run into problems with our mental health is just knowing how much is that flexibility to enjoy, and then how much is you letting go of all the things that help you build that. Because you don't have a physical change of location, you have to build it mentally. And it's very difficult, I'll say, to get up at the same time, shower and do your makeup and put on your clothes to go to your living room and sit and work at your table. But the more that you can do to stay in any kind of a routine, even if your work from home routine is different to your office days routine, it needs to be different from your Sunday morning routine, right? And even if you're lucky enough to have an area in your home you can separate out, or have a door you can close from the surrounding noise, have a desk to sit at, have a break time that you can keep to, and have the clothing that, again, might be more relaxed than what you'd wear to the office, but isn't just you staying in your pajamas until noon. I played around with a lot of this at the start of the pandemic. When we all went from home, I had days where I got up and dressed exactly as I should. I had days where I stayed in my PJs and thought this is the best, but the productivity was definitely impacted by what I wore, how much I let myself wake up and have some sense of working out in the morning, or even just eating a breakfast, not just rolling out of bed and turning on the computer because I was like, oh, I can get extra sleep in. It does play around with your productivity, and that's an interesting mental experiment that we've all gone through. And some people, I think, do thrive working from home, and some people really don't like it, and that is just a natural way that I think different personalities and different work jobs and that kind of thing go with.
We make a lot of, we attempt, I say this to my friends, hope I don't offend them too much, we attempt to make a lot of jokes. I mean, the other day we all had a conference call video, and some of us were wearing a mask, and we were the only ones in the room, and it was deliberate just to lighten the space. Now, following that, when we were in person, one said that this was actually presumably he was being serious for a minute. He said he had someone share with him that was a real thing in another jurisdiction where the people so assembled wanted everybody to be masked because that was what they were expecting. And I thought, therein lies a chance for a discussion, a healthy discussion of expectations. I want to come back to that and talk about the productivity and the mental health aspect. But we do have a caller joining us, our guest, Dr. Alexandra Borden and Miss Anna Wooten, and it's our monthly Mental Health Matters. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon to you, Sterling Green. Good afternoon to your distinguished illustrious guest here.
And to you, sir. Pleasant good afternoon.
Good
afternoon.
Interest here, and I guess it's a very necessary thing you do. I just wondered, I'm just going to ask this and see this too. Is there a time when we are become like we're over counseling, or people become too dependent on counseling and someone telling them, giving them advice, or instead of trying to bolster up yourself, and as my mother used to say, I hear the departed mother, bless her, that too much self-pity, too much, we sit down and we say, oh my God, life is so bad. And then you look around, you see someone much worse. And that, toughen up yourself, in other words, and get on with it. This too will pass, or must pass. Sometimes I just wonder if we're saying, well, it's stressful, and this is stressful, and working from home is stressful, going to work is stressful, all around you it's a COVID, and you're wondering who's next and so forth. Are we sort of scaring people into saying, oh my God, I can't cope with this, I'm going to need some help, is there a time when you say to them, listen, you've got to just toughen up yourself, get some courage and get out there and try to, help yourself. Struggle on with this. We can't keep tying nappies on you, and you'll be forever a little baby with, tying a dap. And you've got to get out there and face the fact that this is a part of life. We're going to go through it. Others went through much worse here. The war, Second World War, First World War, Vietnam War, Korean War, and survived, and other things, other pandemics. And is there a time when you say, well, you've got to sort of help yourself, toughen up yourself, and you can keep coming and getting your counseling, and that's very good and all that, but there has to be a time when you say, this is it now, I must try and help myself, I must get some courage and say, well, I'm pitying myself too much, I'm too despondent. Right. Get on with it. I just wondered. I'll hang up and listen to you.
Okay, well, thanks. And if you wish to disconnect, but thank you for the call. I don't wish in any way to say anything that in the slightest way offends the caller or even anybody else who may think so. But I was asking that question in sort of my survey to informally, just to get a perspective. How many of us have said to ourselves or to the ones that we love dearly, man, just pick yourself up and get moving, dust yourself off, mind over matter, and that's probably necessary. But I'm wondering, especially now, and I wrote down mental health earlier, in this time when things are so different, sometimes the expectations are much higher or perhaps different and we don't know, that we need now not only to have that perspective, but more importantly, we also need to access a professional counselor. Come to the Dr. Bordens and the psychologists and psychiatrists and say, hey, I could use a little help in guiding structure in appreciating that I'm feeling this now in saying that. Yeah. But Dr. Borden.
Yeah, no, and thank you, caller. I think you have some good questions. I think one that often comes up, and one of the reasons I think that we have this show, because that is so commonly the attitude and the approach taken on island. And I will say accountability is important, but I appreciate the chance to be able to talk about the therapeutic process, right? So I think a lot of times there's this idea that therapists or counselors we just kind of like go along with whatever, I think you said kind of all the self-pity, that we're just kind of very warm and supportive and that we just go along with everything and we give advice. So we don't actually give advice. True therapy should be helping you to find your own answers, right? So generally when we start, most of the practices that I'm aware of, we'll start with understanding what's going on. And yes, we are understanding and open, and that non-judgmental attitude is important to allow people to be able to be honest and genuine with what's actually going on. But then we set goals. What do you want to be different? What would your life look like? How could that be different? How could we get there? And then we formulate a plan of where we're going to be going with it. I think that a lot of times, traditionally in the Caribbean, counseling has involved advice giving. And that's kind of like Therapist 101 is we don't give advice, right? What either happens is I give good advice, as you alluded to, and people have to keep coming back to me for the answers, or I give bad advice and you don't trust me again. So really the therapist role is to hold space, have genuine conversations, challenge ideas that come up. If I've noticed, that there's the same pattern has happened, not only with your sister, but also with your coworker and now with your boss. I've noticed that this is going on, perhaps we could look at that. What might be going on there, and encouraging them to think outside the box and doing so in a way that is safe, where they can genuinely express what's going on for them and exploring what's going on, and then helping them to find new ways of dealing with it. So it shouldn't be just a constant pity party. If someone's going through a hard time, we are going to be supportive for sure. But it's not going to be kind of, I think, how things are typically assumed to be. Generally, the therapeutic process should be open. There should be accountability. And, if things aren't moving, and things aren't going in that direction, the client or the therapist can be like, hey, let's have a talk about what's going on. What can we do differently? Is there anything that we're missing? So I think that's important, and that really is put on both the client and the therapist to make sure that the therapy is as helpful as it can be.
Okay, and I know that Ms. Anna, you're going to have to exit shortly as you do normally. Thank you for taking time. But before we do, just sort of...
Sorry. I wish I could stay for the whole thing. I love this conversation, to be honest. It's a good one.
Thank you. You add great value to it. Not just ask you for sort of your closing thoughts, but in the notion that some employers have been very accommodating, try to do so much to ensure not just the mental wellness of the team and the service and the clientele, but the productivity is still there and being responsive. Now, as you sort of wrap up your contribution, speak to us as you wish about the whole thing of how we work together, how we appreciate the importance of our mental wellness.
I love the word boundaries. I come to boundaries a lot. I think they're very, very important in life, and I've come to them fairly late in my life. I learned about them at quite a late age, and this is what I was thinking in response to the caller as well, is that sometimes we weren't given certain tools growing up, and that's not always someone's fault. It's not about blaming our parents. A lot of times people do the best with what they have. But I think we can get into trouble sometimes. Certainly I can, when I push my feelings down, don't let myself feel them, even if I give myself a time restraint on feeling them, and learning how to adopt new tools to get myself through difficult times. And boundary setting is one that I practiced quite late in life, but it's been very helpful, especially through the pandemic. And I think it's especially helpful when you're working from home because the physical boundaries are gone. So there needs to be more and more mental and virtual boundaries, if you like. And they can be ones you try and set with your employer where you say, I understand my hours are still needed to be put in. I do feel more or less productive at home during these times. Is it possible that I log on during these hours when my children aren't around, or there's not work being done outside that's loud, or my partner's not on his calls, because he's also working from home and we're sharing a space? You can have those conversations, and if your employer's willing to work with you, that's great. If not, you have to do what you have to do. And I think that can even go into personal boundaries with yourself, where just setting those standards of like, I will get dressed. Or one I love to say is like, set yourself the boundary of putting your video on calls, Yes. A lot of the time we've started turning them off because I don't know if we're self-conscious or we want to like multitask. But for me, my first thing that can go sometimes with the screen is my attention and my focus. Can drift a lot easier. And I find that if I have my camera on, I feel that I'm on display, whether people are paying any attention to me or not. And so that just makes me want to be more engaged, and I get more out of those. I listen better. I take more notes. I feel more like present because I'm not letting myself be like, oh, camera's off. Yeah, I'm listening. I am more engaged. So sometimes it's setting personal boundaries as well, and just trying to adhere to them. And we're not perfect, and your employer's not perfect, and no one is. So it's not about them being rigid and unmoving and, we didn't do it again today. They can shift day to day, but just trying to figure out what works for you and helps you be the best, because that's all your employer really should want out of you too, because then they get the best work. You be the best, you not better than anybody else. Yeah. And that idea of the cameras as we go into the break. Let's be mindful that the cameras are on. Let's not forget that. So tell them on to be attentive, but be attentive that they're on. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, just make George. Sure you wear pants. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Ms. Anna. Thanks for having me. Not only should the day be productive and enjoyable and safe, but the rest of the week as well. Thank you. You too. All right. I'm going to pause and take a break. And Dr. Button, well, between Susan and you, I'll follow, and maybe I'll not get so much in trouble. But no promises, people. No promises. All right. Stay tuned. And when we come back, more of our monthly Mental Health Matters.
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway Box to Go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips. For all occasions and celebrations, let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
Freedom, Cayman Brack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
How can you take your business from good to great and thrive in the new normal? By finding the smartest, most powerful IT solutions to optimize your business operations. And now, Digicel Business Hub is making it simple for you. High-speed Wi-Fi, mobile and office phones, IT security, Microsoft Office with Teams, and much more. Everything your business needs to level up in the new normal. Get world-class IT for your business with Digicel Business Hub. Sign up today. Call us on 623-2499 or visit our website www.digicelbusiness.com for more information.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
On a daily basis, making it easy to connect with you, our listeners. Add us to WhatsApp today, 925-3261. That's 925-3261.
Radio Cayman.
Send a text or voice note.
Can I send a request, please?
You don't really have to ask us. Just send a request.
This is a shout out to my ex.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And the phone lines are available. We'll remind you of the number in a few minutes. Well, actually, in a few seconds. Dr. Alexandra Borden, every month, monthly mental health matters. And I'm hopeful that more and more of us would appreciate the importance, like we would ask our parents, how is this dinner made again? What's the recipe for this? We'll ask them things. And oftentimes, even without prompting, they would offer up very instructive, beneficial counsel. And I'm getting to a space where increasingly we're starting to do that for ourselves, our loved ones, parent to child, even sometimes the child to the parent, and to siblings and friends. When it comes to, hey, go and speak to some professional about that thing. I say that knowing that I myself can benefit. Where I'm mindful, a very close friend a very long time ago said, I won't put it the way he phrased it because I know that would not sit well, no pun intended. He said he found more fellowship on the bar stool than he found in the church pew when he was going through a particular rough patch in his life. And over the years, that has constantly just been central in my thoughts as I evaluated it. We're judging and condemning as loved ones to another. Oh, sadly, huh?
Yeah, and because they're the ones closest to us, it also hurts the most. And I think that's where, I think that highlights a lot of important things, actually. That different things work for different people. People have different connections, different relationships, different expectations. But I think also where someone like a counselor or a therapist can really be beneficial, because we are objective. It should not be someone close to you or someone that you know. And I know we've had that discussion many times that I'm related to probably a third of the island. But
I think it's 2/3.
There you go.
And the other third doesn't acknowledge it.
Hey, to each their own. And I won't say anything because I'm a therapist. But the therapist should be an objective third party that's there to hear what's going on, to hear your side, to help you figure out what's right for you without having any vested interest. The judgment that comes with being personally involved. A lot of times with the churches, there's a lot of other stuff going on. When people are judgmental of you and discriminate towards you, a lot of times it's because there's stuff going on for them. I think that's a really important thing to remember. But there's all these different supports out there as well. And each person has to find what's right for them. And I know I alluded to I really appreciate having the diversity and the professions represented in the show. But there's also no wrong way to start.
Right. Just start.
Yeah, exactly.
But you said just then, and I'll ask you because I hope that people don't do what men sometimes do. We hear a word and we misconstrue the context or the interpretation and worst application, right? But you said as a therapist, the therapist doesn't give advice, they help you to come. And I think many times we want someone to tell us what to do, from the physician to the personal trainer to our parents to even our partners. But in this instance, what is right for one may not necessarily work for another, even in a very similar circumstance.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of times they refer to it as untraining. I run a counseling theories class, and generally I let my students, we do a lot of role playing because I think it's really important if you want to be a therapist.
Do you guys dress up too? I'm just kidding.
That's up to them. I always dress as a teacher / therapist because I'm coming from work. But I always set it up so there's a client, a therapist, and then observer, so you can watch what's going on as well. Because I think it's important, A, to try it out to make sure that's what they want, B, to be a client, because I think it's very different different to sit in the other seat and on the other side, but then also get a chance to watch how it works. And a lot of times what they do, people who want to be therapists are people who, because all their friends come to them to get advice, and so they kind of come in with this idea of I give good advice and I'm going to fix everyone's problems, and that's not really how therapy works. And it is that kind of respecting the person and their journey that is what's really important, helping them find the right answer for them. I mean, sometimes, people pick things. I'm like, that's really not a great option. And I might say, I'm kind of wondering, let's talk this through.
Yeah.
If you follow that route, what's going to happen? Right? Because really, ultimately, I want them to be able to solve things and resolve things on their own and not rely on me for forever.
Think of us who either, because of our parents or older siblings, and it's usually, not always has to be in this case, but usually it's that older, wiser, more experienced, that person who has a lot more life in their years, and as it were, who will help to nurture us. And they'll say, okay, well, you're doing that, but have you considered anything else? And they may not. And they say, well, okay, let's see what we can. We may call it brainstorming. But I like when you do that, because it gets people to either be cemented in that choice, to realize that it is the best choice, or to complement it with something else, or to actually discard it and go, really, it's not good. Exercise, perhaps that's not a good example, but let's just see where it takes us. You now decided that you want to lose a certain amount of weight, right, as a person, and your physician has been at you, everybody else is saying, but if you were not exercising for 10 years, and maybe it's 1 pound, maybe it's 10 pounds you want to lose, are you going to lose that in the next 10 minutes? Would it be smarter to maybe start now, and maybe it's an ounce you lose, and then finally you get to the pound, and maybe 10 months has passed, and you now 5 pounds later. But is that better? No, we want everything then and there. Give me the pill, put me under the surgery, whatever it is.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something we face with this day and age, with the advances in technology. The instant gratification is huge. And I think that we see that with a lot of things. At the beginning of the show, you alluded to the issues with expectations. Yes. People send emails, want responses right away. And I think that's, while it's great for opportunities for productivity, it's increased the emotional demand so much. Right. I mean, I can tell you, even with like WhatsApp, most of my life I can't answer my phone. I'm either in with clients or I'm teaching. So or I'm on a radio show, so I can't answer my phone. But it causes a lot of stress and something, and it creates other burdens in relationships that's not necessary. And that's where, but even better communication is even more important. I make sure that anyone that gets my cell phone number knows that, a lot of times I can't answer. I'll get back to you as I'm able to. Right. Well,
we're going to take this call. Are we going to take the news? We're going to take the news. I thought she was pointing to it's a star up above. Yeah, she was like, she raised her hand, but I see now, I'm looking at her in reflection, so it was her left hand, not her right hand. I thought Susan raised her hand. Be therefore exalted, my son. Pay attention to the coffee was good this morning. Let's pause and take the news break at 1, and when we come back, we'll continue the discussion.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice. Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom. Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. The Cayman Islands Public Library Services invites the public to a reception at the Cayman Brac Public Library on Friday, 11th of February, to celebrate its reopening on Monday, February 7th, following a 6-month closure caused by accidental flooding in late August of 2021. To RSVP, contact the Cayman Brac Public Library by telephone at 948-0472 or by email at LaTasia.Brown-Connolly, CONOLLY @gov.ky. In international headlines, world leaders are stepping up efforts to reduce tensions over Ukraine as fears of a Russian invasion grow. French President Emmanuel Macron is meeting Russian leader Vladimir Putin in Moscow, while U.S. President Joe Biden hosts German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Washington. Russia currently has more than 100,000 troops massed on Ukraine's borders. Western powers accuse the country of planning an invasion, something Russia has repeatedly denied. A paralyzed man with a severed spinal cord has been able to walk again, thanks to an implant developed by a team of Swiss researchers. It is the first time someone who has had a complete cut to their spinal cord has been able to walk freely. The research has been published in the journal Nature Medicine. Michael Rocati was paralyzed after a motorbike accident 5 years ago. He has no feeling at all in his legs, but now he can walk because of an electrical implant that has been surgically attached to his spine. Netflix's filmed version of Diana the Musical, based on Princess Diana's life story, has earned it 9 Razzie nominations, with the awards calling it Broadway's biggest bomb of the year. The Razzies organizers describe their awards as the ugly cousin to the Oscars and highlight what they see as the worst films of the year, revealing their winners on March 26th, the day before the Oscars. Diana the Musical was critically panned and only lasted for 33 Broadway performances before it closed. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Sollins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us, and thanks to Miss Susan. She brings not just a lot of life and laughter to the show, but it helps it to flow much more smoothly. Her, Joel, Paul, Lynn, the rest of the guys who do the stuff behind the scenes. It is their heavy lifting that makes this, flow much easier. You, Dr. Borden, for bringing in that very, very wide, extensive, varied panel each month allows us to tap into the different resources. And as a community, we may look and point fingers, but sometimes hopefully we're appreciative of what is and be respectful and mindful. As our monthly, mental health matters, that idea of managing workplace, the expectations, the stress that comes from working there and working from home and balancing. It almost seems that I think that we are told to strive for that work-life balance. What is that again? It's all one and the same, right?
Yeah. I think it's an illusion, especially these days.
It is.
So, but it's because kind of this unrealistic expectation that all of us are supposed to aspire to.
Yeah.
And I think now there are more options, which is great, but it also just creates more stress.
Yeah.
Am I well enough to go into the office? Am I not? Am I well enough to work from home? Am I not?
Mm-hmm.
And even when you go into the office, the expectations change all the time.
Yeah.
So there's all this other stress on top of what was already difficult to begin with.
And that thing that I think we hopefully are starting to be mindful of.
Yeah.
That mental anxiety that we were concerned. There was a time back when if you didn't feel particularly well, your co-workers understood. They stayed away. They helped you. They brought some chicken soup and they, honey and lime. They had all kinds of advice. Now we're distant.
Yeah.
We're fearful. I don't want to go in there and get that, or you better not come in here and bring this. I mean, those are the things that happen, and we don't mean anything by it to be mean or hateful.
Yeah.
We're just perhaps insensitive.
It's often just fear.
Fear.
Because we've been in this pandemic for so long. There's an added level of tension between people, for sure. You don't want to get too close. You don't know if you touch. You don't know, do we keep on mask? Do we take it off? There's all these other things that now come into play, especially if people tend to be more of the anxious type.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of these things, good information is going to be really important. So for people who are going into office, finding out what the expectations are, if you're not sure, ask. And for managers, I know there's been a lot of changes recently, especially within healthcare.
Yes.
Being upfront about things, keeping people up to date on what's going on, and making the information easily accessible is really important to try to alleviate some of that stress that goes on.
So timely, accessible, credible, and accurate.
Right.
And we even questioning some of that, probably because of the people that are presenting it. I mean, there are some people you look at and you go, yep, that's a used car salesman, polyester suit, hair greased back. We have this, I try to joke and jest, but we have these perceptions, and sometimes it's just within our own selves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's where, I think that a lot of it is culture. And I know I have a lot of friends that have recently lost their jobs or left jobs because of differences in values. So I think the pandemic has really brought a lot of that to the forefront. I mean, traditionally there's differences in personality styles and communication styles, in personal preferences. But now we've added these other implications on top of that, from things like mandating vaccines to mandating lateral flow tests, mandating certain precautions within the office. And so working from home, if anyone in the household is sick, there's different rules and expectations everywhere. And I think it can be difficult, especially if your values clash with the organization that you're working with. Perhaps you're fortunate to run the business like your friend that wears her comfy shoes at the office. And that's a choice and that's a culture that she's established. I don't know if others are allowed to wear comfy shoes or not, but people figure these things out. Certain things are implied. If you're in a workplace with a lot of people or a lot of different people from different backgrounds, clear expectations can be really helpful, because my idea of appropriate footwear might be different from yours.
Actually, I'll share this, and I don't think, if it's wrong, you tell me no, and I'm sure I'll get the call later. So she did share. This is many, many, many years ago. Back then, I would have probably been accused of being handsome, right? So long ago.
What?
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Sure, still get that.
Only under those days, they end in a Y. So she said she had a new employee, phenomenal young lady that came highly recommended. And up front, the young lady was a long distance runner. She ran.
Okay.
And she said, because of where she parks, for whatever reason, is it okay if she walks into the office with her kids? Maybe she calls them something else. Sneaker, right? She comes in with them. And sometimes she'll have the shoes in hand, sometimes she'll leave them. And of course, she cleared it with this lady, and that was not a problem. One or two people initially thought it was kind of weird. Nice long dress like that, why are you wearing these things? Other people tried it, and this lady said she tried it as well, but that didn't work for her. That just wasn't her thing, right? So she comes into the office, and then when she gets into the office, now she puts on her comfy, I call them bedtime slippers, right? But the very first time that this young lady, comes into the organization and wears these sneakers, there were a few little comments, because obviously that doesn't work. I mean, who wears, a pair of beach shorts, with polished, black shoes that you just come from church? Very few people. It's almost in their minds.
Right.
But it shows, one, the support that you have, but the importance of upfront asking, appreciating, and respecting and valuing what is there. And I say that to ask then, with us, with the employers and the employees and the expectations and the levels of productivity, there are some employees who say, listen, I get more work done between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. than I would get all day, because it's quiet. My brain is engaged there.
Right.
I don't have the distractions of the household, even if I live alone, or I have, I'm 1 in 10, whatever the case is. But some employers would say, well, no, we're not open for business then. I don't care if your reports are, top notch and, days ahead of schedule. You need to be when I can see you.
Yeah.
Because those are the realities.
Yeah, no, and that's where, I think that kind of probably the big takeaways from this conversation really is going to be about boundaries, which we've talked a lot about, especially personally when you're working from home, but also communication, right? And seeing if places are a good fit. Sometimes working from home is an option, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is, but only during certain hours. And so if you don't have any flexibility in your job at that stage, it's up to you then to decide, is this something I can work with, or is this something at least I can manage short term while I look for somewhere else, right? And if not, go into your boss with some ideas. I know that we need to get so much done. I need to be available for certain hours during client hours and for meetings. But could it be possible if we did it this way? It's fair to have ideas, but be prepared, for whatever may come as well.
And we're talking, and again, I want to be guided by you, but as parents, and even as young people, as students, I should say, we're talking about the workplace, but potential even in the school environment, whether it's university or even high school, even primary school. I was told that there are some schools, where, and let's start with the primary and high school initially, where they wanted their children to be accounted for by being seated at their dining room table in front of their computer, whatever it is, as if they were in the classroom all the day long.
Right.
For some children, you probably need that, like for some adults. But for some, if they're rocking in their hammock with their device that is Wi-Fi enabled, it doesn't matter. They're sitting in the back of their dock with a fishing line out in the water, but they're doing their math problems, they're writing on their English assignment. Again, the work is done. Is it that we, the employer, the adult, the educator, expecting more to be along the lines of what is the traditional norm, and as opposed to, I need the outcome, I need your best work on time so that this thing is achieved. We need to change our mindset as well.
Yeah, no, and I think that there's a lot there. I think that more and more schools are trying to be open to kids with additional sensory needs or things like ADHD, where actually rocking the hammock might actually help them to focus.
Yeah.
And so more and more research is showing that, and I think that schools are trying to be more flexible with those options. But school also helps to prepare us for things like the work environment, where there are certain expectations that are not always flexible. So I'd say it depends a lot on what the school is able to do, and because sometimes it is that the teacher's there sitting with them, and that's why they want them to be a certain place and to have their stuff in front of them. Because some kids outside are going to have far more distractions.
Yeah.
But also sometimes if you allow that for one or two, then there's other difficulties with trying to explain why it can't be done for everyone. So it's kind of up to the teacher and the kids at that stage. But I'd say there's a lot of factors that have to be taken into consideration with that. I think schools are trying to be more open to it. Even things like having like something they can put their feet on so they can move that. We're seeing like even pedals underneath, things like Velcro underneath. I sat on a yoga ball for pretty much the whole pandemic, which was brilliant. So I think schools are trying to be more flexible, but what is actually done and what the rules will be will depend.
Well, it's like, we go back to a time when in the work environment, the word ergonomics became so, it was the word of the day.
Standing desks.
Yeah. And everything. The keyboard was redesigned, the support aids for your wrists and for your, all these things. And they're important, even the lighting.
Yeah.
I'm wondering now to what extent a couple of things will become evident. Probably more so in 20 years when whatever has transpired becomes more evident. And our instruction in psychology and sociology, in our finance classes, in our public policy classes, in medicine, all those things are going to start to reflect on. You remember that great pandemic of, like the economists talk about.
2020.
Yeah, it's oh yes, it's still going on. That's good. That'd be sad.
Yeah. No, I think there's definitely a lot of good things that have come from this, but as I said, it can create a lot of other difficulties as well. Because the other one I was thinking about was especially with communication. There's so many options now. Working from home really opened up a lot of other options. I know from my practice alone, and we're a small group of just a couple people. There was like 5 different ways I could communicate with them. Even these days, I'm like, well, I know that they sent me a message. I was like, I don't know if it was on WhatsApp, email, which of my 4 email accounts, Facebook, Instagram, or I even have like an in-group practice chat. I was like, I don't know where the message is. So there's a lot of other difficulties that come with things. And so I think that's where it's even more important that, things like if you're not finding the email or something came up, or you think something was misconstrued, so much of communication these days is by email or messaging. There's no context. You can't see. There's no intonation, and we lose so much of the communication. And sometimes I get an email or a message. I'm like, the heck is she doing? What is he on? And I'm like, if you step away for a few minutes and come back and reread it, it might be different. But if you're not sure, ask. And I think that's a big thing as well, is that so often we get caught up in what should be happening and how things should be, and get caught in those cognitive distortions we've talked about, and it gets in the way of the relationship. Even things like used to, we could be like, hey, I don't understand what's going on here, right? Or we could just get up and walk over there. We can't if we're all working from home, and or Susie's at home today, but Jason's not. So it can be difficult. And managers like, who's working from home today? So then they send out a mass email, and So I think communication. Well, there's been huge advances. There's a lot of difficulties. And I think that's where it's the accountability for ourselves is even more important.
I think too, maybe we need to step back and understand that it shouldn't be CYA. because we send that email because we have that trail. It used to be the paper trail. Now we have that
it in
trail,
writing.
all right?
Yeah.
And it's what prompted the call from my buddy earlier. And you promised to do something, and I go, yep, it's done. It's on your desk. Now, I did it for a couple of reasons. It was my preference. But in the end, and thankfully without any argument, it was agreed. Giving you a hard copy. The electronic one is there, right? You can see the timestamp. It's not a problem. You can use it for audit trail and whatever. But giving you a hard copy, because we kind of work alike. I still like my pen and paper. I can mark this thing up. It's easier for me. I accept that. I look at the digital slaves that we have in our possession all the time. We enslave to them. I still like my BlackBerry. I could do 1,000 things with that. That was a workhorse. I could talk to you, I could email, I could do all of the things simultaneously, and that thing functioned. These little expensive, almost, I don't know what we would call them, flimsy little things, they have no use, unless, of course, you entertain yourself. They're not workhorses, right? Now, BlackBerry is no longer. I have to adapt and adjust. I'm going to go back to my slate board and my slide rule, but it's going to work. All right, when we come back from the break, let's conclude the discussion. For those who want, we will have some open line in the remaining hour, but for the next few minutes of this monthly Mental Health Matters, the phone lines are available to you. And I know Miss Susan, won't have any issues with cassava cake, custard top cornbread. So if you want to share that, go right ahead. We're going to pause and take a break, but the phone lines are there. If you want to call us, 1-800-534-8255. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette, brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
As fate would have it, the early educational efforts of the islands were fostered on occasion by the arrival of shipwrecked seamen. The Sister Islands were no different, with the wreck of a mariner named Johnson, whose ship wrecked on Cayman Brac in 1863. Johnson would start a school which serviced not only children but adults too. In 1881, Jamaican Henry Hewitt set up the private school in State Bay, charging 9 pence per week. As education pursuits grew, it would be the Baptist Church which would lead the charge, given the growth of their congregations in the Sister Islands. Between 1896 and 1906, a large schoolhouse would be built in the chapel at the creek, along with State Bay and Little Cayman.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette, brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointments.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us, and thanks too to Dr. Alexandra Boyden from of course Cayman, and not just because you're a frequent presenter, not just monthly on this show, but you're available to many of the other programming that we have. Your work within the wider community, your teaching and the like. I said, too much to give and much is required. I'm mindful to say this, almost in the same breath. We find a good horse and we work it together, we ride it to death. As a society, I think we need to step back very quickly and realize we did it with some of our parents and some of our teachers, and there's so many stalwarts in our community that they're so reliable, but they have a certain, amount of time too. I don't know if you have 25 hours in your day or if yours is as mine.
Yeah, I keep asking God for a little bit more.
Yeah. And I want us to, as a people, to step up. In each one of us, try to do the very best that we can do.
Yeah.
You know, your best may be better than somebody else's, may not be as good, but it's your best.
Yeah.
And for us now to respect and recognize that you gave your best.
Yeah.
And
which will be different for everyone. I think a lot of the issues these days is we try to do so much at one time. A lot of us try to multitask, and I think the foundation of starting to manage the stress within ourselves and with our own productivity and expectations. Obviously, if there's unrealistic workloads, talking to the managers about that if you're able to. But it's going to be prioritizing, you know, so at work, what's most important? What do I need to get done? Even if you pick the top 3 for the day, you know, and go ahead and get those done. You might not get all 25 things done. Keep the list. Know that it will get done tomorrow. But being able to kind of focus your efforts on that. Do one thing at a time. That's the mindfulness that we often discuss, right? Mindfulness is good for managing stress. It's also good for productivity, which is what made me first take an interest in it. You know, focus on one thing. It's the best you can. Get it done. Move on to the next. So prioritizing communicating limitations. You know, if your boss gives you 5 things to do today and you know you've only got 3 hours left, you know, I hear you. I hear these are all important. You know, you can ask them which of the 2 would you rather me focus on right now, or I think I can probably get these 4 done today. Is it all right if I wait till tomorrow to get the other one done? So prioritizing and setting some of those boundaries and expectations as well.
Last month's discussion, we referenced a book that helped us, right?
Yes.
And it's something that we need to get our stuff in order, as it were, in order to get moving.
Right.
And many of us joke, I have a 100-do list. And some of us would say, I got a to-do list. But how many of us recognize that we have a must-do? You must do this thing in order to do this, right?
Yeah.
So prioritizing is the must-do, right?
Yeah. But I think as at work, but also in our own life as well.
Yeah.
You know, thinking about what's most important to us. You know, that's where like so like right now, mine is my health and my baby. So I work out and I do something with my baby every morning. So I know once I go to work, anything can happen.
Right.
You know, so that's kind of my priority. So when I get into work, I can focus. You know, and do what needs to get done there. But definitely, yeah, and. You know, and a lot of times you get caught up in, you know, procrastination or just trying to plan to get everything done. Do the best that you can with your priorities and just go for it. You know, and getting started is the big key.
Indeed. And I say that to ask of you publicly and through you to our listeners. We're mindful of the space in which we are now as individuals, as a corporate entity. We're respectful of each other's safety and the like. We're probably driven by fear, and many times we're probably conflicted and confused and even confounded. I mean, there are sorts of things. But I believe, and again, it's what I believe, as human beings, we're social beings. And we're built to socialize, whether it's from the scriptural religious perspective, whether it's just our own practice. We need, not just want and crave, we need that level of physical interaction, right? Some, not as much as others, granted.
Well, that's what they're finding, right? Is that especially in a lot of the countries where they're still locked down, they're actually, people become more tired from having meetings by Zoom.
Yes.
There's something called Zoom fatigue, you know, because it takes so much more energy to pay attention to what's going on and trying to respond because you're losing a lot of the connection. You know, it's like people often ask me as a therapist, like, how can you sit and listen to people's problems all day? Therapy actually brings back a lot of energy as well, a lot of good energy as you work through things and people, you know, have new insights, as people are able to make changes. But that was one of the things that I found is that, you know, in doing therapy and doing presentations, especially presentations where, you know, teaching and doing workshops, I ask a lot of questions because I feed off the energy of the people I'm working with.
Right.
You don't get it, especially if there's no cameras on.
That's it.
And so it takes a lot more to work in that way because you're not getting the feedback and the energy back.
You take a person who is about to make a public presentation.
Yeah.
Yes, they may be nervous because there's a large audience or whatever, but if that person does what I think many have been coached to do, hey, practice your speech out loud in front of the mirror, in front of someone. There's a difference in delivery then and when they're actually live and because you get the feedback if the audience is engaged.
Right.
It's like a band, they're playing to a very, very lively crowd. The energy, right?
Yeah.
So I asked that to ask now, are we mindful that during this time, not all of us, but I would say to all of us that I know, and certainly me, we've been snacking heavily. I mean, I
can't see what's off the screen.
Yeah, I have been enjoying many things that not long ago I was very consciously avoiding, right? And enjoying things that I don't even like.
Yeah.
Why am I eating those things? I don't even like those things.
Yeah.
But they're an immediate source of gratification, of physical sort of nourishment and energy, but it's a distraction.
For sure.
It's a coping mechanism.
And boredom is one of the biggest ones, especially when you're home. You don't have the commute to work. You don't have the chit chat. You don't have, a lot of the things the stimulation that comes from going to work, you don't have. And that's where those boundaries are particularly important. But if you do notice that you're relying on snacks to fulfill emotional needs, right? So if you're not hungry, you're just eating because you want it, because you feel like you have to have it, or because you're bored, finding something else to do, go for a walk, listen to some music, do a meditation. So finding something else can be helpful. I just want to make a point as well, because we've talked about communication. A lot of the things that I see as well in the workplace is bullying. And so I think that's something that's come up not only in my practice, but a lot of others as well. And so that's where I think HR can be particularly important. So trying to, if something like that is going on, and that's where I do think some people have preferred working from home because they're not having to deal with the drama of working
at the workplace.
Exactly. They're not coming around your desk and hanging around and asking questions. You don't have to worry about what they're wearing or what they said when you walked in wearing those shoes. And so it cuts out a lot of that. But it can still happen, and especially in things like emails that can just come across as really rough. So if there are difficulties like that, talking to your manager, if it is with your manager, if there's HR available. A lot of times they will have someone there to help with conflict resolution or mediation. There's free counseling available through the Counseling Center at 949-8789 if you just kind of need someone to talk to, and lots of people in private practice too. If you need someone to talk to come up with a plan, and a therapist can be there to help advocate as well. But a lot of companies will have someone there should you have concerns that they will help to mediate what's going on.
Yeah, and the word bullying, and I recognize that we're near in our end of our segment, but and I say this again consciously but carefully and responsibly and respectfully. We may see governments believing that it is the best thing to do under the guise, as they say, public health, passing legislation, implementing regulations and policies, and even sometimes companies. And we will say, oh, well, that's a contractual thing, so they can do that. But we mandate certain things, and then when people sort of ask a question, well, is that really appropriate? Is that really the best course of action? Out of fear, we may be unwilling to challenge it because we don't want to lose out on the next invitation or the promotion or the job, or, we fear being ostracized because we're social beings, right? I look at, the international media, and now in Canada and Ottawa, we may be supportive. We may look at them and go, oh, geez, what a bunch of people, what are they doing? But the news is now saying there's a state of emergency, being declared in there. What are the implications of that? What if a legislation is enacted that says that on this particular section of this particular legislation, a government entity has now the authority to do this thing, whether it's requiring you to be refrained and restrained, or whether it's requiring you to be injected or otherwise, whatever that thing is. How are we as a people responding? We can't just, wait 20 or 30 years from now and say, oops, that was not the right thing to do. Is there sufficient courage and sufficient intellect and civility in a workplace to manage each other and assist with their safety and well-being in a society, to have meaningful discussions?
Okay, well, so if it's looking at government and those kinds of laws, there's going to be different channels to go through to be able to get information, hopefully to ask questions, and to be able to put out information as well. And a lot of times there are community forums for that. In the workplace, if you're not sure, I'd say whoever's in charge should be able to explain why certain decisions were made. And, and then in that case, if they don't, hopefully they can get information to help you. If we understand things, then a lot of times it's going to be easier to follow them. So a lot of the teams that we've worked with, because especially at the beginning of the pandemic, we did a lot of workshops with different organizations on how do you manage going to remote working? How do you manage coming back into office, which I think was actually probably the harder transition, and how do you keep everyone abreast of what's going on? So, and as I said, communication is key. To just lay down rules without any explanations, is difficult. So that's where hopefully whoever's in charge, we actually encourage management teams, talk to the team, see what they want, right? Like as, even in my practice, I was like, this is what I think we should do. Is there anything else that you guys need to feel safe and feel comfortable working?
Right. Now, one size fits all,
with the work that we do. Yeah, exactly. And, some people may be comfortable with no mask once you're in a room. Others are going to be like, no, they have to be on. I want the couch over there.
As far as,
or I want, my cubicle to be blocked off, and certain things are going to be able to be easily accommodated. Others aren't, but it's fair to ask questions, and hopefully management would be willing to have those discussions.
There was the UK professor, I don't remember the university in the UK, and she had shared that this was early on, one of the challenges that she thought the media would have is when the government is before its people trying to present information, that for the media, in order to do its job properly, being able to be physically present, be able to ask questions and enact a certain protocol to be safe, but engage in such a way that they can help to keep the government in check. Just like the parliamentarians, when they eventually would meet in the House of Commons or wherever, to ensure that they serve that role of accountability and the like. And I'm wondering to what extent, as a society, we are doing just that in order to be responsible, but also to make sure that we are accountable. And we've seen increasingly, whether in the Cayman context, or again in the UK, probably one of the greatest sort of examples of democracy. We're seeing through its official agencies, a lot of contracts were awarded that didn't go through the right protocols and review. It doesn't have to be that there was something sinister. It was just that people were responding quickly. But what if it was? Time will tell. I'm asking ourselves, what are we doing now to be mindful of that, to be cognizant that the end of the day,
Yeah. Well, and I think more and more, with so much information available, it's really about being an informed consumer. Right? And so a lot of this is going to be getting as much information as you can, hopefully from credible sources, to make your own decisions. And then see, make any changes, put information out there, do what you can. And to some extent you have to decide as well, what am I able to live with? And if this is what's being mandated or instructed in this organization, in this country, in this family, whatever whatever system you're operating in, and see, try to provide information, try to have those discussions. Sometimes there's flexibility, sometimes there's not. And unfortunately that's when sometimes we have to make other decisions. Either have a revolution or maybe looking at finding another job. So it's I encourage people to get the information that they can. Don't just have an opinion because that's what you think. Go and like, whenever I have discussions with my students, I'm always devil's advocate. And I think they figured this out now, and I've actually started telling them, whatever you say, I'm going to say the opposite, because I think it's important to explain why. Yes, you believe that, but why? Right? And I was like, sometimes I've defended terrible people in history, just trying to get them to think about it. So you're an informed person, have an informed opinion. Because I think that's important, and I think especially growing up in small places, or places where there's not a lot of diversity in opinions, it can be easy to fall into, this is what we've always done. So I think it's important to question things, right? I ask some questions that some of them, the looks I get were fabulous. It's not been as much these days thanks to social media. There are a lot of other people asking them the same questions. But be an informed consumer, and also, if you get information, check out the source. Where is it coming from?
Trust but verify.
And I always tell them, I was like, even if it is within the the scientific literature, see who paid for the studies. Go that length. well, this is a great finding, but was there a control group? Was there enough persons within the sample to make this a generalizable result? And so I think that's, we do a lot with that in school, with educating them on that. But I think these days, so much information coming at us, it's important for all humans and all adults right now, and even our young people, to be informed consumers. Look at where the information is coming from and see how that fits within your values and your goals and your dreams for yourself.
Well, Dr. Borden, I always come away from our discussions not just more informed, but more willing to become informed. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I'll just do one last little plug. Anyone who is looking for productivity tools as well, as much trouble as I know I bash on electronics a lot, as I think we all did this time. There's a lot of tools out there. So being open to new ideas, new ways of doing things, and finding things. Like, you can get things that shut off social media. You might do it where you say you're going to work on this report for 30 minutes. Use your phone to work for you, right? And if you're not using one of those, turn it off, put it in a drawer, silence it, put it away to help you focus. But it's going to be about optimizing things and being open to trying new things and seeing what works for you. Do it one way a couple days. If that's not working, do something different.
Always try to improve and be the better you.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much. I look forward to our next public engagement. To our listeners, as Dr. Borden said, there are many resources. The government expenditure through its taxpayer dollars for the counseling is money well spent. So please, It's a free service to all of us in the society. Let's take advantage of that.
Alex Panton Foundation as well has free groups too, so running on the weekends for teens online. And then we've got the adult support groups as well that are at Parcel 110 now. Check out the Alex Panton Foundation Instagram, Facebook, our website for more information on those. And any emergencies, we have the Crisis Center hotline, 943-2422, available 24/7.
All right. Listen, together we're stronger. I'm going to pause and take a break, and when we come back, if I can, I get Susan to sing. Stay tuned. We'll talk today.
Busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
Subway makes it easy for you to stay on top of your health and wellness goals with our Fresh Fit menu options. Choose from 5 Fresh Fit Subway sandwiches with only 450 calories or less per 6-inch sub. Turkey breast, veggie, oven roasted chicken, Black Forest ham, sweet onion chicken teriyaki, or make your 6-inch Fresh Fit sub into a salad or wrap prepared with fresh vegetables. For a full menu and nutritional information, visit subway.ky. Subway, eat fresh.
Make your house into a home. Welcome to Brand Source Home Gallery, your source for premium products and a premium experience. We'll design and install your dream kitchen with crafted cabinets, complemented with elegant appliances. We'll fill it with quality houseware and cookware. Custom designed closet and storage solutions organize and beautify any area. And with the finest bedding, you'll get a perfect night's sleep knowing Brand Source Home Gallery has everything you need to make your house a home.
Government's new recruitment portal offers job seekers a paperless online process that makes it easy to apply for more than one job anywhere, anytime. With this step forward in our online recruitment presence, you can keep track of outstanding applications and appointments and receive notifications about your applications. Visit the careers.gov.ky portal and use the new one-stop shop for civil service recruitments to further your career.
Are you a recipient of the Tourism Stipend Program? The Ministry of Border Control and Labor requires all recipients to complete a survey to reconfirm their contact information. The survey can be found on gov.ky/labor/stipend. The survey must be completed no later than Tuesday, February 8th. Contact 649-6932 or email stipend@gov.ky with any questions.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable. MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Excuse me, I noticed you from afar.
Really? Me?
Well, not you. The KFC sandwich you're eating?
Oh, Zinger.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be funny.
No, it's called the Zinger Sandwich. Crunchy, juicy, 100% chicken breast, crisp lettuce, sweet mayo on a seeded bun with a little zing. KFC's chicken is not factory breaded, frozen and refried like the Burger Boys. Customize your KFC Zinger and dip it in barbecue sauce.
Wow, now I'm starting to notice you too.
KFC, it's finger licking good.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And thank you very much for what I believe is a distinct pleasure and privilege. A genuine honor to sit here. I joke and jest, and I'm sure my closest of friends and family would say, man, stop saying that. And I said, if you wanted to see a more handsome face, you should look at my brothers. And that's probably true, but not that mine is displeasing either. But I can tell you, the voice hopefully resonates, a heart filled with love and compassion, and one that wants to see a stronger, unified society, and one that is willing to question the status quo, but is also willing to champion it if it's the belief that it's the best thing. End of the day, let us come together. I think Dr. Borden, as I heard her share many wonderful things always, let's find a way to improve the lives of each other. We all be our very best, give our utmost, not to outdo someone because we're expecting anything in return, whether it's an award or public acknowledgement or even some sort of remuneration, but because it's the contribution that makes society that much better, safer, stronger, healthier, more stable, and successful, not just from the financial perspective, but socially harmonious. I think we've all traveled to some wonderful places where, at the outset, we're probably instructed, please don't leave the group, please, be mindful of certain things, and they were just wise. Now, probably, hopefully, not at all like what many of you were told by the cruise ships when they would come ashore to some of the Caribbean islands, including Cayman. Oh, don't drink the water. Buy the bottled water from on shore. May be safe, but definitely take the one from the ship. That's better. Don't consume the water on shore. And perhaps that's not really the best instruction, and perhaps there may have been an ulterior motive, to increase the on-ship sales, but maybe not. The question is, though, if those things were said, let's use the example of the cruise ships telling its passengers, don't buy the water from, the destination. Is it because the water is really bad and the destination has refused to address it? Or is it that it's not, that it's true, but they haven't acknowledged it and said, hey, you do something about that malicious lie, or we'll do something about it. It's very much, and I use the cruise ships as an example, not just because of the challenges that many destinations are facing because of the cruise tourism is off, including our own, or because there have been heated battles. Some of you know more intimately than some of us. Take Alaska, for instance, and what was alleged, and seeing the true court proceedings established that they had to settle through that means. But take, for instance, the challenges and the allegations on our own destination many years ago, where the pre-bookings seemingly were creating some challenges for those entities on shore who didn't either have access to those contracts and so were sort of displaced, or even those that did. And just as an example, just to make it extreme, may have come to learn that the cruise ship, sold a particular, attraction for $100 per person, but paid the operator, $1 per person. Now, it certainly wasn't probably that greater disparity. But just as an example. Now, knowledge is powerful and empowering, but a government that is willing to ensure a rebalanced structure, properly, and equip infrastructure, perhaps goes a long ways to not only benefit the people then, but then establish and ensure a much safer, healthier, equitable, and perhaps stable economy and society. The question is, to what extent, those of us who know are willing to stand and be counted and exert a level of courage and confidence to do the right thing, or are we afraid because we don't want to offend someone, we don't want to necessarily, play our hands and tip our hats, whatever it is that we say these days, to appease our conscience, and the fear that we'll be excluded from something, we won't necessarily get something that we think we deserve or we would want. Worse, when someone is doing that thing that you think, glad someone's doing it, glad it's not me. Do we encourage them silently and privately, or are we courageous to draw alongside them publicly and say, you know what, I stand with you on this thing, this is the right thing to do? I give us an example, and I hope he does not mind. If he does, he can call me publicly or privately. The Honorable Tourism Minister, for instance, shared a public posting that said, and like he did when he called the show, he says a level of, he used the word nastiness, I think a word that our aged parents and grandparents, if they were to use that word with us, it would have struck a chord, and we would have been, very, very much corrected in our behavior. He's used that in relation to the derelict vehicles that are being scrapped in our public roadways, in our dumps, and the like, and a behavior that I don't believe I've encountered anybody yet who would not agree that such a behavior should continue. A few years ago, I joked when it was shared that it was an immediate action because it was an election year. A very prominent operator in the taxi and tour sector had called again publicly and said, listen, there's a particular street that we use. We bring, many of our arriving passengers and guests from the airport, and we use this route. But increasingly, more and more derelict vehicles are along the roadside. Not only that it's unsightly and makes a bad impression, but potentially it's unsafe and impedes traffic. It's probably unsafe because who knows what sort of rodents and other critters could be harboring there. And it's disrespectful because we have these cleanups. We have the wonderful work of the DEH coming along and helping to do stuff, and NRA, and lo and behold, it's done this morning, and by sunset, it's as if nobody was there. Well, the responsibility lies in us. And if we are not willing to stand in the gap, to physically do something, to call out those who are, either turning a blind eye and failing to enforce, or who are openly and actively contributing to this nastiness, this offensive, rather egregious behavior, then are we not as much to blame? Some would say more so, some would say almost so, but certainly we have a role to play. Now, my friends in law would talk about, a tort action, and the judges decided to award damages in favor of the plaintiff. But because of, a level of contributory negligence, has said, well, I would give you this amount, but I'm going to reduce it by this percentage because you failed to do this thing which, would have helped had you done it to not contribute to the extent of the loss. May it have been some accident, but if you were cognizant and wore your seatbelt, not just because it was the law, or if you had not been doing this at that time, despite not just being told in person, but the signage, but also your personal experience that doing this could actually lead to this outcome, you gotta bear some responsibility. And so too it is with us as a society. There's no point, every year having an annual national book cleanup, or participating with our corporate entities or our neighborhoods or our church groups or our community groups in doing a cleanup. And for 5 minutes of that day, that roadside, that neighborhood looks wonderful. It's pristine. But the next day, it's back to the same, littered place as it was the day before. Well, that's on us. And maybe we might think passing legislation that even imprisons people, and even if we enforce that thing at some point, unless the behavior changes, we'll either have collected a lot of money in fines or have imprisoned a lot of people that we need to build more space to accommodate them. But if the behavior isn't addressed, if the reason for us in the first place that's tossing or litter along the roadsides or doing whatever that thing is that offends the sensibilities, it'll continue, and it'll continue today and perhaps into generations unless it's arrested. No pun intended. So, Miss Susan, what sayest thou? Well, we're going to take this quick break, and when we come back, give us a shout. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Government's new recruitment portal offers job seekers a paperless online process that makes it easy to apply for more than one job anywhere, anytime. With this step forward in our online recruitment presence, you can keep track of outstanding applications and appointments and receive notifications about your applications. Visit the careers.gov.ky portal and use the new one-stop shop for civil service recruitment to further your career.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
And good afternoon, welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us. It is open line as we invite you to call and share your thoughts with us. 949-8037. Toll free with the compliments of Flo at 1-800-534-8255. Or you can WhatsApp 925-3261, and we'll probably share a few as I look at the messages that's coming through. But in the interim, maybe two quick things. One, a wonderful saint the other day, truly a person that epitomizes the warm love and hospitality that is the Caymanian spirit. She called and she said, hey, listen, I found this tire. It's a brand new tire. And if it's yours, if it's somehow you've misplaced it, it's come off mid-step, well, if you lost the tire, call us here at Radio Cayman and we'll direct you as to where you can go. But she still has it. And that speaks to something that was very evident long ago, or maybe something that we can rekindle once again. But I'm also mindful that this is not the only place where that exists. Immediately in the aftermath of Hurricane Ivan, when people were able to charter flights and the like, a number of our companies, as part of their sort of contingency planning, as part of their ensuring that their clientele is served, they relocated staff temporarily to other jurisdictions. And I'm told that a few went to other places. And one individual has related a story that has resonated. There was what would be akin to a yard sale, and the stuff is on the lawn. There's a big bucket, you put your money in, you take the goods, and there was no question that people would, not pay and pay what was there. That's beautiful, and this is not that long ago. Let's go to the phones. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for calling.
Good afternoon to you, Sterling Dwayne.
Welcome back, sir.
Again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
First, I'd like to say it was really very, very heartwarming and very encouraging and invigorating to hear ceremonial, and the governor's speech yesterday was excellent. And the rest of all our members of parliament, because we are the people who they are representing to Her Majesty and Her Majesty's government here in the Cayman Islands, and our commitment to Her Majesty and our, our long association with let's hope this goes on for a much longer time period. I mean, this connection with the British government and our love and devotion for her, in her principled life and her steadfast commitment, to that life, and it's a tough reality, but she faces these things and has had many problems there, even with her own sort of family members and all that. And she has surmounted that and carried on the passing of her beloved husband and so forth. And Her Majesty is resilient as ever, and there she is at the age of, she'll be 96 years old in April, I think it's the 21st. And just wonderful. And one thing that struck me was what our former Premier, and I believe he's now Sir Alden McLaughlin, he said he was, I might not be quoting him exactly, but concerned about when Her Majesty departs from the throne, whether she passes away or whether she turns the tour, but that he's concerned about what will happen with the Commonwealth and what will happen. And this is the thing that has always concerned me. She's the cement, the glue that holds the whole Commonwealth together, and the British Empire together, and the colonies here. We often talk about independence, and so did I, up until the last 3, 4 years or 5 years. I would never recommend that for us at all, in no way, shape, or fashion. Just hold on. What we've got, what I see Cayman has become. You're talking about the garbage and all that. Have you ever heard of anyone being prosecuted for littering? There's a fine for it. There's a charge. I've never, ever heard of anyone ever being prosecuted for littering. Maybe you have. You could enlighten me.
But if I could ask you, though, I mean, not only from the perspective of enforcement and someone being prosecuted and fined, but may I ask you, is it that we should do that, or would it be more effective that as a society, our culture or ethos and expectation is that...
It's not our culture.
No, what I'm saying...
It's not our culture.
Right, no, what I'm asking is that...
I'm not going to say anything about that.
Right, but what I was going to ask you is that should it be that we, when enforce legislation, enact and enforce legislation, or should it be that the culture, the society's ethos is one that says to people, if you do that, don't be so concerned about the law and its enforcement. Be more concerned with the way society looks at you as, if I could use the Honorable Tourism Minister's words, look at you as being full of nastiness. Would it be better if the society frowned it openly upon that, and that behavior cause other people to correct their behavior of littering in these spaces?
I understand exactly what you're saying, Sterling Green.
Yes,
I know
sir.
your way is more the sort of appeasement way, and the, appealing to people's better nature and so forth. I, over years of life, have noticed that doesn't really work. Not in my books, it doesn't work.
Yes, sir.
I've seen it over and over. I'll take, for example, as I said, it really isn't. This is just happening in the last 30 years. And we know what has happened in the last 30 years. I don't need to go over all that with you. Cayman has changed, and not the same islands, right? You've got to remember, the generational Caymanians, the indigenous, if you want to put it that way, they're outnumbered. So it's a very, very different nation, if you want to call it that, country, if you want to call it that, territory, call the name. It's all more or less the same.
Yes, sir.
In my books.
Right.
They take, for instance, the terribly loud what passes for music. The bass booming, rattling your windows at any time of night, on Sundays, whatever. I had on it last night with that. It's useless really complaining to the police because they don't seem to be able to do anything about it. I've asked this question on the radio here the times. They don't seem to be able, and they must hear it, they must experience it. It is awful. It has reached an unacceptable stage.
And I think, respect for the caller, he is raising a crucial point. And if you would allow us, thanks, Ms. Susan. I see we're a couple of minutes past the hour for our news break. We'll take that. And let's pick up that caller's point and let's ask the question. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice. Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom. Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. The Cayman Islands Public Library Services invites the public to a reception at the Cayman Brac Public Library on Friday, 11th of February, to celebrate its reopening on Monday, February 7th, following a 6-month closure caused by accidental flooding in late August of 2021. To RSVP, contact the Cayman Brac Public Library by telephone at 948-0472 or by email at LatashaLatasia.brown-Connolly, CONOLLY @gov.ky. In international headlines, world leaders are stepping up efforts to reduce tensions over Ukraine as fears of a Russian invasion grow. French President Emmanuel Macron is meeting Russian leader Vladimir Putin in Moscow, while U.S. President Joe Biden hosts German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Washington. Russia currently has more than 100,000 troops massed on Ukraine's borders. Western powers accuse the country of planning an invasion, something Russia has repeatedly denied. A paralyzed man with a severed spinal cord has been able to walk again, thanks to an implant developed by a team of Swiss researchers. It is the first time someone who has had a complete cut to their spinal cord has been able to walk freely. The research has been published in the journal Nature Medicine. Michael Rocati was paralyzed after a motorbike accident 5 years ago. He has no feeling at all in his legs, but now he can walk because of an electrical implant that has been surgically attached to his spine. Netflix's filmed version of Diana the Musical, based on Princess Diana's life story, has earned it 9 Razzie nominations, with the awards calling it Broadway's biggest bomb of the year. The Razzies organizers describe their awards as the ugly cousin to the Oscars and highlight what they see as the worst films of the year, revealing their winners on March 26th, the day before the Oscars. Diana the Musical was critically panned and only lasted for 33 Broadway performances before it closed. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And thanks for joining us. And thanks again, immense public thanks to the last caller. His 2 salient points, as he shared, and it's interesting. I think many would know that he has not only been a very, very untiring contributor publicly, and has been very, very diligent and deliberate in his public pronouncements relative to his, and I stress this, as he has his opinions. His comment that there was a time when he was perhaps a more ardent proponent for political independence than he is perhaps in recent years. Maybe some of you, like him, have revisited your thoughts. Maybe you've become much more convinced that ever more than ever that political independence is the way. Maybe you've said, well, no, we should strive for a greater sense of economic independence. Like some perhaps asking, well, is there such a thing as, independence? Is it more interdependence? Do we need to look at, as best as possible, being as autonomous as we can, but appreciating that whatever is happening globally, whether you talk about one world currency, uniform tax codes, one world government, however you phrase and look at the things that are transpiring, is it then that the actions of larger, countries and governments and even entities like the corporate entities influence sometimes the economies as well as the outcomes in other society, but sometimes are they actually dictating what happens, what laws are introduced and amended, what things get action or actually fall by the wayside. We may term such behavior as the lobbying effort, but the question is, what is the consequence of either that thing which is done or that thing which is somehow prevented from being acted upon? And then his notion that Her Majesty has the glue that cements the Commonwealth fabric, as it were. What happens? Now, there are many who would have respect for her as an elderly person, as a lady, as the position, but just the recognition that she's been in office, so to speak, longer than many have had the blessings to be alive. She has certainly enjoyed tenure beyond what many of us. Wow, I worked for the organization 10 years. I've been there 25 years. This is my 40th anniversary. But to be sort of in office for that length of time, that in and of itself is a major, major accomplishment just by itself. But the fact that she's endeared to millions. Now, the question is, as we look at her example, is it, as many who have implied, are others in positions of authority, and I wouldn't say in the same position? Do we have the same level of humility? Do we have the same approach to being great examples and offering up a level of service so that we unify people, we uplift them, we try to do the best that we can to ensure that others are, as much as possible, uplifted as well? Now, you may not have the great influence that some have. You may not even recognize the great influence that you do have. The parent over the child, for instance, sometimes don't appreciate that it's not just what we say, it's what we do. And even though we may acknowledge that, do we really, really understand that power? Do our children see us doing something and we think that they don't, or that they take away from it one thing when we actually are oblivious to the fact that it's something else that they're seeing? History and experience, they say, the greatest teachers, but unfortunately you can't unknow and unring the bell. And then we come back to elected democracies where the leadership, how do we act? How do we behave? What is our premise? What is our goal or objective? Is it to cement a legacy that, irrespective of the truth, it's going to be painted a certain way because we can dictate? Or is it that we're there acknowledging that we're there to serve and to improve through our contribution our society? And are we willing, as others, to draw alongside to assist? 8949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp 925-3261. Now, I always invite you on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to join Mr. Art for the record. And very instructive and engaging discussion. I think all of our callers add great value, and even when we come away with a perspective that people have dissenting and differentiated views, it only makes the society that much better when there's a platform that we're respectful of that view and that it's accessible. And take the notion of the stipends that our government has tried to offer up to people to help them. Now, the argument that some get it and probably not deserving, very much similar to the payments that governments, used to give to citizens and perhaps still continue in the absence of some sort of social security welfare system, and the fact that some would say, well, why is that person getting it? That's an able-bodied person. Why can't that, person work? Now, think of it today. Someone may be getting $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever the sum is. The question is, if they're still working and they're getting this and they're not able to even make ends meet, is it that we are castigating them for receiving that amount, or have we looked more closely and trying to understand, why is it that at a certain sum you're still not able to even make ends meet? All right, we're going to pause and take this final short break, and then when we come back, we'll take our calls. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
Explore your history. Explore your land. Explore your sister islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your sister islands.
Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Thinking of getting a hybrid but don't know much about them? Vant Motors has 3 great reasons why you should own the Toyota CHR. Hybrid save fuel, run cleaner, reduce CO2 emissions, and even recharge their batteries while being driven. So there's no need to plug in a hybrid, making it both economical and fun to drive. And you don't have to replace your battery every 2 years. The CHR Hybrid is reliable, providing up to 1 million kilometers on the same battery and engine. Oh, and now you can save $2,000 off the Toyota CHR, starting at only $33,500.
That's way more than 3 reasons.
True, but the best one is that it's on sale now. Test drive the Toyota CHR today at Vant Motors, Walkers Road, while stocks last.
You see how hard it's raining?
Yeah, and I don't have time to fight traffic and get my lunch from Subway. I have so much work to do.
Why don't you order Subway by using the Let's Eat or Bento app? Save time, stay dry, and get your sandwich fast.
I never thought of that. Great idea. I'm going to order now.
Order me a veggie pizza while you're at it.
And a cookie platter for the office.
Too busy at work or home? Is the rainy weather stopping you from dining out? Order your favorite Subway sandwich, wrap, or pizza through the Let's Eat or Bento app with fast and reliable delivery. Subway, eat fresh.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, welcome back, and thanks for joining us in this open line. And we do have a caller, as Ms. Susan reminds us, so let's go straight to the phones. Hey, welcome, good afternoon, thank you for calling.
Hello, good afternoon, Sterling. How are you doing?
Well, my friend, how are you?
I'm not doing too bad, God. Living good, thanks to God.
Amen, brother, amen. You sound, awesome, man. So thanks for taking time to call us.
Yeah, man, no problem. What I really called about was, I just wanted to bring this up because I think it's important. That when we see things like this, we have a conversation about it so that we can try to do something about it prior to something bad happening. Mm-hmm. Because we all know that prevention is way better than cure.
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday afternoon, I was driving down West Bay Road, right? And you know those black scooters that they use, that you can rent online and pay by the minute or whatever.
Right.
Now, I've always had a little bit of skepticism while seeing that, simply because we know that our roads are congested and it's very dangerous without having anything additional on the roads, trust me. And I know that a lot of kids were utilizing them in busy areas, so my fear was always that something would happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and it's not to knock on the business. I think that everybody should be allowed the opportunity to explore whatever business that is legally, allowed here.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that I've been following it for a while, and I know that New York and Manhattan, they started to ban them because of the dangers, and they even had a few deaths, right? Now, yesterday, I was driving down West Bay Road in the afternoon, late afternoon, and I saw two people on the main road headed past the Ritz-Carlton, and I saw how shaky they were, and they were on the main road. They weren't on the sidewalk. So after I passed those two people and just looking at them saying, gee, boy, I pray to God that they don't fall in the middle of the road in front of an oncoming car. And I got up a little further, and there was a third person who must have separated from the group. And let me tell you something, Sterling. The moment I said to myself, I said, gee, this girl don't look too stable. And it was a big woman, too. When I said that, I mean, she must have been in her mid-20s, early 30s.
Right.
I say, and I deliberately slowed my car down after seeing her. You know that girl, and I tell you this, that girl wobbled, hit the sidewalk, and fell in the middle of the road in front of my car.
Wow.
And had I not already been thinking about that, being concerned that that's a possibility, I might have just been driving, not paying it in mind, just on my regular way. And, you know, if I had done that, if there was another car behind me that wasn't paying attention or that wasn't thinking about that, that girl would have ended up getting severely injured yesterday.
Wow.
We, as a government, and they look to be tourists because they went into she got up, and some people ran to help her. She got up and she walked into the Westin parking lot, and she was trying to brush off, you know, her scars that she got from scratching the ground. And I said to myself, I said, gee, what a close call that is. As a government, I mean, as a people, as institutions, the government need to ban them off the main roads.
You know, I'm glad that it didn't turn out to be any worse. I'm glad that it was very attentive of you, and I've had other people that, as they said, you know, they weren't prepared to call publicly, but share something similarly. So thank you for drawing it to our attention. And then the questions now that we're asking is, like you said, you know, other jurisdictions that are seeing what may have been an attempt to assist with, you know, emissions and the like. Is this something that should not occur on the main thoroughfares, right? I'm told that the administration prior to the last one enacted legislation that allowed these things to occur. As a sort of a complimentary comment, a fellow shared that if you look at a lot of similar conveyances, for want of a better word, they look like motorcycles in the sense that they're electric or gas. They have two wheels and some sort of either standing or seated position, but they're not licensed, they're not insured, so government is deprived of revenue from that perspective. But then they're also on the road, and like you shared, are they posing a risk to the rider as well as to other road users?
They are.
Yeah.
And one of the reports that I read out of New York and Manhattan, people have been killed by being hit by people riding them on crosswalks. They ran into a woman in New York and killed her.
Wow.
And the thing is that, yes, we need to be looking for alternative solutions to reduce our carbon footprint and to reduce traffic on the road. I do not say anything against that in any way. But there is a right and wrong way in how we implement things. This was an idea that somebody came up with. Well, let me get some scooters and rent them by the minute and get permission to put them in these locations, and they could ride. And because they're like those scooters, there's no real sanctions in terms of they have to be roadworthy, indicators, brake lights, visibility. Listen, yesterday was a clear eye-opener for me personally because I saw it with my own two eyes. I even rolled the window down and I said to the lady, I said, you just need to be a little bit more careful. In fact, you should probably ride that on the sidewalk and not in the main road because you just fell in the middle of the road.
Right. But so, let me ask, I mean, you bring up so many interesting points that begs for a greater sense of public discussion to ensure that we strike that balance. But remember those upright things that we stood on? And, is that what they call? And we've seen the potential dangers such that I think at one point, if I remember serves correctly, we had disallowed the use of them. That may have changed now. But we also remember that there was a time when we weren't allowed to use any kind of conveyance on the road that wasn't roadworthy, licensed, and insured. And if if it is true as alleged that there are many cars, automobiles and the like, on the roads that are not licensed and insured, being driven by people who themselves don't have a valid driver's license, is the use of these conveyances sort of created a precedent that if they can be on the road without being roadworthy and licensed and insured, why is it that the person
I see your point, Sterling. I definitely wouldn't say that has created some sort of reason why people choose to not license and insure their car. I think that
I'm with you, but
I believe that has been going on long before any of the introduction of these things. Certainly, one could see, and it is an argument. But what I will say is this: is that we need to step in and intervene now, before someone loses their life on one of these scooters, because it could be prevented by just simply saying, "Look, we're outlawing these things from being ridden on mean roads and in traffic areas and whatnot." I mean, I know that a lot of them were in the Commander Bay area, which was more ideal, but even then, I still have the concern that there could be some unsuspecting pedestrian at Commander Bay where a lot of families go with their young kids. And one of these scooters at high speed hit somebody's child. God forbid, oh my God, that happens, that child could be at great risk of losing their life due to us just considering the convenience of someone else or a different area. We need to be super careful how we introduce new things to our environment without proper structure or things that are. I mean, that girl came so close to losing her life yesterday that it led me to make this call, which normally you know how I am. And
I'm glad you did, man, and I really appreciate it, because you hopefully would cause more of us now to at least acknowledge that there's something worth of discussion. We don't know that, again, in other jurisdictions, a valid legal license and insure motorcycle, for want of a better word, is not allowed on certain. Didn't
mean to cut you, but you know what, Sterling? Here, I would go a step further and to venture to say this: under no circumstances should those scooters have the ability to be legally licensed to create danger to themselves and the public. Those things are unworthy. They're unsafe. They should not be allowed to traverse in traffic areas in any way or any form. It is an unnecessary risk that we are introducing simply to try to mitigate something that is not as a greater concern as somebody's life. And on that note, the only other thing that I will say, and I know I got a lot of friends that ride bicycles on the weekends, what I will say to all of the bicycle riders on this island is to please, as much as you want cars and drivers to take consideration of you on the road, please take consideration of the drivers who pay insurance and licensing fees to be on the road, and stop riding in the middle of the road assuming that you have the rights over the drivers. And whenever a driver tries to maneuver around you safely, you show them the finger and you cuss them off and treat them as if they're not supposed to be on the road. Not every bicycle rider does that, but there is a group of bicycle riders they are terrible the way they treat people on the road. And they need to take consideration the drivers as much as the drivers need to take consideration of them. I know a lot of them ride early in the morning just to avoid much traffic. However, there are times that they run into the day where traffic picks up. And these guys they ride, if you got 25 bike riders, you got 3 of them riding side by side as opposed to in a straight line on the side of the road to be as safe as possible. Somebody need to bring them into check, before you get to a point before somebody lose their life, and that is a large price to pay.
I hope again and pray that as we hear what you have shared, that it's about taking on board and making this thing, as you said, safe for all of us. So that, and this is where people like you make an invaluable contribution, like Mr. Mickey and others, because it encourages us to think and to express a view, either supporting or challenging, so that at the end of the day, a meaningful outcome that's beneficial is brought to the bear. So, hey, thanks very much, my friend.
All right, man. Thank you. I appreciate the time. You guys have a good day.
You too. And the caller, as usual, makes an excellent point. Now, we might say, well, let's balance the impact on the environment relative to the emissions and the carbon dioxide and all, I guess it's carbon monoxide from the cars. Ms. Susan, you're a mechanic. you got brothers. That's all the pollutants that go into there. And when we think of, he referenced New York, and I'm sure it's probably in other jurisdictions, but we're probably familiar with it. There was a time when some of us used to travel. Some of us, it's been centuries since we've, been in that aluminum, little tin can and taken off over the wonderful skies. But remember, in New York, the bicycles were ways that things got around a very heavily congested city. And there are many instances when sadly the car and the bike collided. Anyway, let's take this the caller. Welcome, good afternoon. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon to you again, Sterling Green. I have to agree with Mr. Mario there that regards of the scooter thing there. I've noticed it quite, and I've been very concerned with the same issue that he said. The safety of it on our major highways, we have to call them. And I agree with him. It should be something restricted to the more, just residential areas where traffic isn't that dense and where the speed limit is much less and so forth. Even though the 25 mile zone, I notice most people are obeying it by far along the western there, but still, it's a risk with out there on the highway. Definitely, I've seen that, I've noticed it, and I agree with him 100%. And with that, what I was saying to you before, Her Majesty, the conservative approach she has taken and so forth is very important over the years. And, I've said that one of the things I've always said, I know we might be pushed to go in a politically independent state. Many people think independence as a clause. It's political independence. We already have economic independence. We know that. There's lots of money here. It's just that our system of taxation has not allowed it to be distributed evenly. And we can't blame any of our present government or just... It's a system we have sort of stuck with that just isn't working. I won't say any more about that. We all know what I think about it. And I won't go into that now at all. I'm not backing down from what I said with that at all. But one of the things that has bothered me, and it will continue to bother me, and as I said, might lead us to the point where we'll see, and it might not seem so to others, but to some it does, is this thing about freedom of religion. I think many people were confused and thinking of it as meaning freedom of denominations. Freedom of religion means exactly that.
Yes, sir.
We have always practiced the Christian religion here. We have always been involved in that. We all know that. And it has been a very steadying and steadfast system that we have always depended on, the advice of them and so forth, and the church has always been a powerful player, as it should be in our lives, the Christian church. Now, we see the movement in Europe, continental Europe a lot, and in the United Kingdom. Let us not get away from it and pretend it isn't so, towards a more Arabic and Islamic, if you want to put it that kind of way, system where we see incoming ministers, and so nothing wrong with that, but not with the old traditional British names, and definitely not. And the thing is this, it may move towards a system with where the Christianity might actually be started to be persecuted. We know it is around the world, in the Arab countries and in many of the Islamic countries and so forth. With these things, people know and see, and perhaps a blind eye to the importance of it. This might occur as reading a letter from Bishop Sykes, a very, very brilliant mind and very astute conservative Christian. And in it, I wish people would read that letter in the newspaper. It is what we see can be happening with this repression and subjugation of the Christian message.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm no professing Christian, but we all grew up with strong professing Christian parents, man, particular. And I'm not telling people beating you over the head to go to church or whatever, but showing you the way of life that Jesus lived and his disciples and the apostles and so forth. And nothing is wrong with it. They scared us for. So we might face that might be the instrument to me that might push us to this. I hope it doesn't happen. But when we see Her Majesty fading away or whatever, let's hope it's not very soon. I do not know if that will not take a hold in Great Britain. That is my only fear. That is my only fear, looking towards the future, because the future never is, never was, and always will be. I live in the present.
Yes,
but
sir.
I think we have to think about it. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.
Amen. Thank you for his blessings, and God bless you, this country, and all that live, reside, connected there too. We are in a very, very beautiful place, and if ever I say something that either offends, let me know, and I can either respectfully apologize, maybe try to explain so that we come to an understanding. Hopefully that we don't mistake each other's compassion, hospitality, or civility for something other than just that. We can, draw alongside each other, and in that great sense of unity, build a much stronger, healthier, socially stable community. But there are those of us that we believe because our name is such and such, our position is so and whatever, that in itself, entitles us to certain things. We can act as if, there are no consequences. And as the caller have alluded to, if we allow a practice to go unchecked and unchallenged, and we know or strongly believe that it offends the sensibilities and good practices and even the laws, that practice may then become the accepted norm and become the thing that everybody says, well, is okay because everybody else does it. They say two rights, sometimes when we draw together, or we can get to where we need to go. But sometimes, we need to stop and maybe make a left turn. That doesn't mean, as it has for some, the negative connotation that it is. It just means that we are trying to go in a better direction. And when we are willing to stand in the gap, stand in a principle and conviction of courage, of humanity, and of humility, and honesty, then we're doing that much better. Sometimes, we need to look more closely and examine who we are, what we are aspiring to be, and in fact, what are actions and its consequences. Well, join us tomorrow for more Talk Today, right after the midday news and midday meditation. We have the business buzz. I won't ask Miss Susan to preview the show tomorrow unless she wants to. Maybe it's a practice I'll start. And we have a wonderful host in our colleague, Miss Anita Khan. As I reminded Fawcett Khan, she's an amazing, amazing lady. And a little preview. We're going to be talking about technology and drones. And so young mise en place. That is a discussion for tomorrow. See, I do hear voices. Susan whispers in my ear sometimes. I won't make a joke, because some of you might think that it's not funny, and it probably isn't. But it's good to hear sometimes when you listen. Now, we also have on our own talk today, right after the midday news, our first guest will be none other than the indomitable spirit of Carolina Ferreira as our guest. I'm very grateful again to each of you for your prayers, your public blessings. I'll take them on board, and hopefully I become even better so that I can serve you even more greatly. And together as a society, let's do our very best. Our children deserve none less, and our parents, through their sacrifice and service, whether here for ancestral links or whether they've come from other places far afield, we all have one thing in common. We are more alike than we are different. Please enjoy the rest of the afternoon. If Miss Susan's going to play a country song, whether it's by Alabama or Alan Jackson, whether it's Andy Martin, it doesn't really matter. Once it's good country, it soothes the soul. And to my good friend, who looks at the Cayman callaloo and calls it spinach. You too can be instructed. But we'll talk about that later. Until tomorrow, my friends, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Shaken yet standing firm.
I was not built to break.